I was certain the temperature in the room must have risen by 10 degrees at that very moment, at least. That was how it felt to me. My pulse quickened as I realized what she was asking. A beautiful woman was trusting me to ease her tension, even suggesting that I adjust anything that might hinder the comfort she sought. The weight of the moment, combined with her quiet confidence, left me both flustered and keenly aware of how extraordinary the situation had suddenly become. "All right," I said quietly, "I will do as you ask, but only what you ask." I wanted to be absolutely clear that I would not cross any boundary she had not invited me to cross. "I know," she replied softly. "I know you will do only what I ask, and that you will stop the moment I tell you to." "That's right," I answered. "I will." After a brief pause, she spoke again, her voice carrying unmistakable intensity. "Then please continue with what I asked of you." The depth of her longing was unmistakable in every word. I remained silent as my hands reached the top of her blouse and carefully worked each fastening free. After every one, I paused just long enough to sense whether her mood had changed. Nothing suggested hesitation or discomfort. The only indication I noticed was the subtle shift in her breathing. It grew slightly quicker, a little more shallow, quiet signs of awareness rather than resistance. When I reached the final button, I eased the blouse apart until the fabric rested open on either side. I moved carefully, attentive to her comfort, and as my fingers traced the edge of what lay beneath, I discovered an unexpected convenience: a front fastening. I almost smiled at the small stroke of fortune. Moments earlier I had been wondering how I might manage without disturbing her. With deliberate care, I released the single clasp and allowed the garment to fall open. She was revealed to me then, unguarded and vulnerable, and for a brief moment I simply paused, aware of the intimacy of her trust and the closeness we now shared. The bra was a gleaming white, fashioned from a smooth, silky fabric that caught the light softly. It was clearly chosen as much for its appearance as for its function, offering elegance rather than heavy structure. Delicate lace trimmed the edges of the cups, lending it a refined, decorative quality, and the same lacework continued along the straps, completing a design that was graceful, feminine, and thoughtfully made. I shifted slightly, settling into a more comfortable position and gently adjusting Sylvia so she could relax more easily. She moved without resistance, responding softly as I guided her shoulders back until she was resting against my leg. The change in position seemed to put her at ease, and she let out a quiet, contented sound as she settled in. I paused for a moment to make sure she was still comfortable, then gently shifted my hands upward, resting them lightly against her upper chest. She was petite, and the touch felt careful and unhurried, guided more by attentiveness than by motion. Her breath caught as my hands came to rest against her, and I immediately became still. "No, it's all right," she said softly. "It's good. Please don't stop again unless I ask you to." "As you wish," I whispered in reply. My hands moved with slow, deliberate care, offering a gentle and attentive massage. My fingers traced light, careful paths, responding to the subtle reactions beneath my touch as I continued. Though a part of me wished I could draw closer, it simply wasn't possible in that moment. I noted the thought and set it aside, something to be considered at another time, perhaps while remaining fully present in what I was doing. I continued the massage with slow, careful movements, gently working across her upper torso, from the tops of her shoulders down to the smooth curve of her midsection. I moved my hands along the sides of her body, my fingers spread so I could feel her warmth beneath my touch as my palms glided downward. I continued to massage her carefully and attentively, tracing the natural contours of her form and lingering wherever I sensed tension or sensitivity. I was mindful of my movements, exploring only the areas that felt appropriate, never straying beyond the line of her waist. Every motion was deliberate and considerate, guided by a desire to comfort her and to remain fully aware of her boundaries. That does feel quite pleasant, but, I would really appreciate it if you could move a little lower." I felt overwhelmingly warm now. Beads of perspiration gathered on my face and traced their way down my neck, and I had to brush the stinging moisture from my eyes before it blurred my vision. "How much lower would you like me to go?" I asked, placing deliberate emphasis on each word, my tone careful and measured. "Until I ask you to stop," she replied softly. "You will stop when I ask, won't you?" "Yes," I said calmly, meeting her concern with certainty. "I will stop the moment you ask." She nodded faintly, her eyes drifting closed as she murmured, "Then please, continue." After a pause, she added in an almost playful whisper, "And don't keep hesitating." My hands wandered farther and wider, easing around her middle before drifting down to rest at the top of her waist. My fingers explored cautiously, as if discovering unfamiliar territory, while my hands moved almost on their own, guided more by instinct than by intention. My eyes were closed as my mind quietly formed images from the sensations beneath my hands. Her skin was astonishingly smooth, unmarred by any flaw or imperfection that might disturb its harmony. It felt warm and dry, almost radiating heat, as though she carried her own gentle fire. I could sense that warmth rising toward me as my hands moved with careful intention, guided only by touch and an unspoken understanding of what she wished. It wasn't long before I encountered another obstacle in my careful task. My hands could not slip past the snug waistband of her skirt. I paused briefly, attentive for any sign of hesitation or change, but noticed none. Reassured, I traced the edge of the waistband until my fingers found the buttons at its side and gently undid them, moving with deliberate care. As I slowly opened her skirt, a tremor passed through her. Her unfocused eyes opened briefly to meet mine, then closed again. After a moment, she relaxed once more. When the skirt fell open, I caught a glimpse of the delicate lace edging the top and sides of her very light, almost translucent undergarment. It resembled the kind often displayed in glossy fashion magazines, cut high along the legs and low at the waist. To describe it as merely bold would hardly do it justice. It was designed to be striking, daring, and impossible to ignore. Moving more slowly than before, and with deliberate care not to disturb her, I gently rubbed the tops of her legs, my palms gliding in an unhurried rhythm up and down, again and again, each pass extending just a little farther than the last. My hands traced the inner lines of her legs, rising gradually toward her thighs. When my touch reached the place where her legs met, she released a quiet sigh and shifted slightly, parting her legs to give me room, granting access to areas that moments before had been beyond my reach. The only difficulty now was that my hands could not reach any farther down her legs, and my arms were beginning to ache from stretching them to their limit. Still, my hands continued to move wherever they could, tracing gentle paths and lingering in every place within reach, careful not to cross the remaining barrier of fabric between her legs. "Take off your outer layers," she said softly, her words carrying more authority than request. "Don't pause, just keep going. For me to continue as you have asked, we will both need to adjust," I said quietly. "Then do what you must," she replied, her voice low and earnest. "Please, just don't stop." The longing had returned to her words, unmistakable and sincere. I carefully rose from the couch while easing her gently down onto the cushions. I moved her only as much as necessary, mindful and deliberate, so as not to disturb her comfort as I helped her out of her blouse, skirt, and other layers. "All of it, off, now," she said quietly. I had never heard such a striking blend of longing and quiet authority in a single voice, and it left no doubt about the depth of her intent. I shifted slightly until I could slip my hands beneath her and carefully ease her clothing downward. She drew her legs together for a moment, then lifted just enough to allow me to guide the fabric along her thighs, past her knees, and finally free it altogether as it slipped away at her feet. I took the opportunity, while I was seated near her feet, to remove her shoes and then her white, lacy socks. Her feet were as lovely as the rest of her. Though I had no prior experience for comparison, they seemed impossibly soft, carefully groomed, and genuinely beautiful to my eyes. Her nails caught the light, finished with the same delicate polish I had noticed on her fingers. For a fleeting moment, I found myself wondering whether it had been specially chosen just for her. Once the final piece of clothing had been set aside, her body shifted naturally. Her legs parted in an unguarded, relaxed way, one drawn up along the side of the couch, resting there, while the other slipped over the edge, her foot touching the floor. She settled into the position as if it were the most comfortable place in the world. She was now entirely uncovered, and the sight of her was undeniably pleasing. There was something quietly welcoming about her presence, an ease that drew the eye without effort. What struck me most was the contrast. She lay in a pose that might have seemed bold, yet her expression remained serene, almost tranquil. I found myself unable to reconcile how someone could appear so openly alluring while at the same time looking so calm and perfectly at rest. I could see her clearly, every graceful line from her feet to the crown of her head. I was certain that many would have given anything for such a view. As I shifted closer to her upper body to give my hands and arms more freedom to move, my attention was drawn to a subtle detail I had not noticed before, a faint shadow of warmth and softness just above the point where her legs met, an unmistakable sign of her maturity and femininity. I had never imagined anything like it. Nothing in the countless magazines I had leafed through over the years had prepared me for a sight so striking and so unexpectedly captivating. I found myself unable to look away, drawn in by its delicate presence and the sense of intimacy it conveyed. Almost without realizing it, I leaned closer, until I was only a breath away, completely absorbed by the moment. I could see every fine detail of her, the soft outline forming a delicate pattern before me. On closer observation, I noticed how that gentle texture rose slightly at the center before settling smoothly to either side. The image fixed itself in my memory with startling clarity, and I knew even then that it was something I would never forget for as long as I lived.